Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. We're going to be talking about a hustle culture. Is it good? Is it bad? What is it anyway? We're about to find out. Please leave a like, hit that join button, and super chat your questions, comments, and displays of support. It's the Thursday Collective. We got a bit of a full house. We got first, you know him from American Rust, season 2 coming. Your exclusive sneak peek information right here, exclusive on the Daily Objective. It's Mark Pellegrino.
Hey, Rucka.
Hey, and then we've got a guy he's from Greece. He's in London. Where has this guy not been? He was in America. The traveling philosopher, Nico.
Hi, and good to see you first time after ARCUK.
Now, let's talk about hustle culture. What is it exactly?
So the reason I got interested in this topic is that we live in times where anything that has to do with capitalism or the so-called Protestant ethic or whatever people understand as related to the mindset of capitalism, quote, greed, all these things are met with a lot of suspicion. However, there's this idea of the hustle, which means that you get after it, you wake up early, you try to be productive, you also take care of yourself, you have a routine. There are all these self-development books, self-help books. And many of us objectivists thought, okay, this is an interesting thing to observe, that on the one hand, we're told that you have to sacrifice or that capitalism is immoral, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, we recognize that it's important to go after your values and go fully. Now, this was too good to last for too long. And lately, there has been a lot of discussion about the toxicity of hustle culture. Now, what is hustle? Hustle means basically that work is one of the most, if not the most important thing in your life. And it means that you glorify that you work very, very, very hard and that you make this your lifestyle. So there's been a lot of criticism that hustle culture is toxic, that it's very harmful to your mental health and to your actual health, but also it's harmful socially, we are told, which means that it creates an environment of antagonism that I see, for example, on Instagram, that Rucka wakes up at 4:30. Now I want to do it, otherwise Raz is going to think that Rucka is working harder than I do. And all this creates a very unhealthy competition. So this is the criticism to hustle culture. And if you want to put one person in your mind, what is, let's say, the personification of hustle, think about someone like Gary Vee, who tells you, do a lot of things, post 70 times, take side hustles, do something. This is a time full of opportunities. You have to grasp these opportunities, get off your ass. Or someone like David Goggins, although he wouldn't like probably the term hustle, again, do more, be better, be something more than what you are.
Interesting. So, the fact it's being called a culture, I guess they're basically observing that a lot of different people are like pushing themselves to capitalize on as many opportunities as they can. It could also be kind of a social thing, like club culture, hookup culture, like a lot of people making individual decisions with all of the many options that are in front of them, trying to maximize their experiences. And then people are kind of conceptualizing it as a culture, like as a phenomenon taking place around us. Mark, now you're obviously a hardworking actor. I would imagine, high on your priority list is not, let's say, what the calendar says is today's holiday, right? Or whereas some people, it's like, oh no, today's Memorial Day. I must be at home barbecuing. Whereas if you're an actor, you're on the set when, you got to be there, you travel around, everything kind of comes after, getting the job done. Is that so? Would you say in your own field, you're kind of part of this hustling life?
Yeah. Well, I would say it seems appealing on the surface. There's definitely attributes to it that I ascribe to. I believe in constant self-improvement, but the toxic element of this, or I don't mean to be pushing a punchline before I should, but it doesn't seem very human centric, or it doesn't seem to be molded around the individual's actual wants and needs. I mean, work is definitely a very big part of our lives and something that we should get a great deal of meaning in. But grabbing the brass ring for the sake of the brass ring seems like a sort of a second-handed approach to the world. It seems like success for its own sake, or for something other than your own happiness. And so I like driving myself because I want to feel better and understand the world better and feel more successful about myself. But it really doesn't have too much to do with the other people in the world and how they perceive me. And I get the vibe that there's a sensibility of that here that's unspoken. Maybe I'm wrong.
Is being really into fitness like a part of hustle culture, Nikos, you think, or is it its own category? Because some people, they're obviously super into their appearance and fitness and all that.
Yeah, it is part of it. So in some of the articles that I did some research that criticize hustle culture, they talk about the rise and grind kind of hashtags, and they say they have millions and millions and millions of followers, and they put these two things, the one opposite the other. On the one hand, the amount of people who say they're really, really dissatisfied with their life and their career, and they relate this to the pandemic. What many people realize in the pandemic is that they would rather work from home, or that their working environment doesn't offer them anything, or that they don't like their 9 to 5 and they prefer to do side hustles or things like that. And at the same time, this article said, there is all these people who glorify how hard they get after it. Now, I will tell you what I find appealing in the critique of hustle culture and what I think is very, very worrying in the way that hustle culture is being vilified. So overall, I would say if I'd have to pick a culture, I would pick hustle culture, because I think in its essence, there's something very good in it. Because in a period, in an era of low expectations, it puts the bar higher. And this is, again, very rare if you think our culture. Our culture is a culture of excuses, a culture which puts the bar very, very low. So the fact that this culture exists, and it's also obviously commodified and it's become cool, this is something which is almost a breath of fresh air. Now, when the problem begins when this hustle culture is for its own sake. For example, you hate your job, you hate the place you work, you hate your co-workers, but you have to quote hustle because you have to, because that's the environment. So bring in mind, for example, this cool Silicon Valley workplace where are the tennis tables and there's the open bar, something like we work in London. So many people say this sounds very appealing, but it's completely soul destroying because you are never out of work and you are never alone. Now, this is something which makes sense in terms of something that it's bad and something that is alienating. But the problem is, in this case, that you don't like your job. The problem is not hustle culture. Let me give you another example from my own personal life. Around 2014, I read a book by Ayn Rand called The Miracle Morning. So this is the book that I think even before the 5 a.m. club actually put it in fashion to wake up very early. So the moment I read the book, I was very excited because I like the idea that you get after it. And I started waking up early. Now, the problem was that my life back then sucked. Okay, not big time, but it wasn't super fulfilling. I was in a teaching contract which wasn't fulfilling. I was teaching things I wasn't enjoying. So for some days, I was waking up at 5 o'clock, and I remember I was reading Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State because I wanted to say I'm going to do something productive. And then at some point, I realized, what am I doing here? I'm waking up early. I'm tired for the next of the day. And what's the point? Like, I don't have something to do to wake up early. Now, you could say it's a good habit anyway. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a why, if you don't have a purpose why you quote hustle, then hustle itself can be actually very quickly turned to a burnout, because you realize that I'm putting myself some extra stress without a particular goal.
Yeah, I'm reminded of when we did an episode reviewing the newest Matrix movie. I think it was Don Watkins and I, and he pointed out, I think, that like when the first Matrix came out, the sort of the culture depicted at the time in the late 90s was like, you go to work, you're in your cubicle, you hate it, you get home, you go on the internet, the budding internet, to try and find some meaning and adventure. Whereas today, flash forward to today, it's the internet and entertainment, and the culture is just constantly stimulating us, throwing us more options than we can pick from. I mean, just look at TV, streaming. There's like a bunch of different streaming services now. There's no time to watch everything we want to watch. There's no time to date everyone who's going around. Like, there's just so much happening. And it's like, on one hand, it's like if you're trying to do everything, you're actually doing nothing, right? Like if you try to exhaust every option. So I could sort of tie this to what objectivism says about knowledge, about skepticism versus certainty, right? Like the skeptics, and obviously, take this as a student's, report. The skeptics, they say basically, unless you're God, like unless you know everything at once, at all times, from all possible angles, unless you're God, unless you're omniscient, you're not really certain of anything. That's sort of like the way it's set up, so that knowledge doesn't actually mean anything because it's impossible. And that's kind of how skepticism functions. And of course, mystics come along and say, yeah, since you can't really know anything, then turn to mysticism. So I guess I'm kind of reminded of that. It's like I always feel like my life is being, not always, but I sometimes feel like my life is being wasted because I'm not everywhere at once, doing everything at once, enjoying everything that life has to offer. But obviously that's an impossible standard. So kind of similar to knowledge here, just in terms of like what life experiences are possible. If in my mind, it's like, I must exhaust every possible opportunity, take every possible opportunity, then I'm not actually going to live. I'm holding the bar somewhere impossible to reach. Hope that made some sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to running so fast that you're missing all this. You're just running past everything. Hustle is great. Getting after it is great. Having ambition is great. Wanting to be constantly improving who you are is great. But this doesn't seem to have the focus of real self-improvement, and it doesn't seem to be connected to your human life. It seems to be goals sort of out there, abstract things that people are reaching for. You know what I'm understanding? It's the rationalism, I think, of the self-improvement world. All of this should be about, us being fulfilled and happy, right? That's our end goal, is to make our lives fulfilled and happy. And you need productive work to do that. You need love to do that. You need physical health to do that. And you should pursue those things with passion. But this is devoid of passion. It's like a robotic, this is like a robotic thrusting forward. It's a machine. It's not a human being. I don't know, Nikos, do you disagree? I mean, I like your point. I like your point that it's better than the low bar. Everybody now hates the standards of beauty, standards of health, standards of intelligence. They're all being obliterated. And this is, in a way, a substitute. But is it like saying, all right, I'll go with the Republicans because at least they like some things that the Democrats are just awful on?
Well, not necessarily, because the Republicans are bad, whereas hustling for something you love and you enjoy is good. Now, let's Stillman the case against hustling. So what about the issue of people being overworked and this leading to things such as stress, depression is thrown around a lot in these articles and all that stuff. So could you be doing something that you like and at the same time experiencing these bad things? So again, from personal experience, particularly when I started doing only the thing I liked, which was working full-time in objectivism, the way I felt, particularly the first month, was not good. I had issues here and there. But could this be that quite often this is, again, some bad premise that you have in the back of your head, which, for example, tell you, now you have the career you want, but this is now your duty. Not something which is there to serve you, but something that you're there to serve it. Or put differently,
yes.
Let's say there's a conference and you wait for it, you want it. If it becomes this dot in your program that stresses you, and it becomes the center of the universe. And the closer you get to it, the more you're stressed. This is literally a sacrifice, because you are sacrificing what this work means to you. And now you experience it as something which is a burden, as something which is a duty. So it doesn't anymore serve your life. So at some point, particularly when you get a ringing bell, like, I don't know, you have a physical reaction or something, then you realize, okay, I need to put this in the right perspective. I want a fulfilling career because I want to have a good life. And it has to be in this, order. And then you can hustle even more. You can sleep 6 hours when you're in a good mindset. And when you're doing something productive and feel well, and you might sleep 8 hours and be stressed and be under this duty-bound idea that, oh, I have to do more, and now it's the conference and blah, blah, blah. So it all comes down to how you approach it. And Gina Gorlin said something very interesting in Ocon. She said in her talk, and I encourage people to check it out. She said, the fact that you're an objectivist doesn't mean that you're going to approach your career in a healthy way, because our philosophy is not automatically transferred and automatically translated to our emotions. So you can have a very healthy approach to your work, you can love your work, and then you can still experience your work in a very unhealthy way. Now imagine if you're lacking these premises, if you don't have a healthy approach to your work, and if you hate your work. So it can very easily go down. And I have sympathy for many people and many of my former colleagues in the academia who say they're depressed or overworked and all that stuff. Are they objectively, quote, overworking compared particularly to, I don't know, older generations? My answer is no. Do they experience it as overwork? The answer is unfortunately yes. So when people say, oh, I'm on a burnout, most of the times it's true.
Something that I don't think was mentioned yet is the concept of a central purpose, and like Howard Rourke, he's got architecture. Ayn Rand has, book writing or writing. And I think to be happy, you need to have one. And I guess you could have more than one, but you need to have one at least. And then kind of everything else sort of, I think, lines up more or less around that. So, yeah, I mean, if you also want to have a family and you also love your career, then maybe you would select a partner based on if they could go along with your career choices and stuff like that. But you do need to have like a central purpose, I think, or life itself is just this endless chase of, the dragon, right? There's a term, I think, a metaphor created for heroin addicts, right? Chasing the dragon. But I think it's true of like just seeking thrills and just chasing after this, like just never ending, running down this never ending trail. So without that central purpose, without a career choice that you're absolutely passionate about and that you love, then without that, you're always going to be kind of just kind of like trying to mask something, I think.
But still, it's like there's this other centeredness to these stresses that I think is still implied. It's the undercurrent, right? Why do you feel this duty and this pressure? This pressure is coming from inside of you, and it has to do, I think, with other folks. People learn an acting technique, for example, and they forget while they're learning the technique that the purpose of the technique is a tool to help you unlock your creative elements. But for a long time, it becomes an end in itself, and they become all technique oriented, and it loses its facility to actually do what it's intended to do, because you're not putting it in perspective. And, to me, pressure comes from within. If I'm feeling stressed about something, it's likely that I'm worried about the impression I'm going to make or how other people are going to feel about my workload. And all that, just, your work is for you, man. It's for you. And it's not about how they receive your talk. It's not about how they receive your play that day. It's about how you worked on it, the process you went through it. And it takes a tough skin, like a whole set of premises that you have to integrate and to let that shit roll off your back so that work becomes just a joy, and the reception of it, or worry of the reception of it, or the pressure of the work. It's just no fucking thing.
Actually, this what you said is super, super important. The solution to this is, it's going to sound weird, become more selfish. the solution to this is to say, okay, I'm literally sacrificing. So I'm going to give you an actual example. Hopefully this is not going to become too Oprah Winfrey, but I think it captures what you said. So before Ayn Rand Con London, so I was looking very much forward to Ayn Rand Con London, the European conference we had in April. I had prepared a very good speech. I was so looking forward to this. 2 weeks before I get, 10 days before I get COVID. Not a big thing, but I need a negative test to travel. So every day I test positive. I spend my time running up and down, waiting for that negative test. Last day I have a negative test, I travel. I'm full of stress. In the airplane, I feel my heart pumping. First day, I feel my heart pumping. And I say, wait a minute. What you're doing, you have to realize you're going to speak in an objectivist conference. And you're the least selfish person here. You're letting this duty, my speech has to be good, I have to run everywhere. No, put one gear down, relax, and enjoy the conference. Don't do anything that you don't have to do. Just relax and enjoy the process. And I think this was a big lesson, that the solution is not to say I don't care, because you do care about how your talk goes and how your conference goes, but to say, this is something which is happening for me. I love that I work for ARI for me. And if I go to burnout, and if my hair grays before I give my talk, then what's the point of the talk? So the answer is see it in a selfish way, and then everything takes their course.
Yeah, look, I knew an actor who became very famous. He's won all kinds of awards. He's got a work ethic like nobody I've ever seen, but the work ethic is neurotic. There's something wrong with it. It's not healthy. And he's even admitted on a show, because he's since fallen from grace. He admitted on a show, he's like, I was on a path to kill myself. That, he wasn't connected to life, and work was not connected to the betterment of his life. It had some other sick purpose to it. And people in objectivism can use workaholism as they could use objectivism as a rationalization for just being workaholics, who are people who are trying to avoid life on 50 other different levels and use work as an excuse for that. Yeah, fucking improve yourself, man. Be the best person you possibly can. But, driving yourself like a maniac, maybe we need it because we're in such a low ebb, for our culture, but I don't know, man. It should be about your capacities and your ideals and your improvement, which looks different than everybody else's.
Some discussed towards the end the issue of whether Ayn Rand and her heroes, let's say, promote this hustle culture. But Rucka, do you want to say something?
I was going to ask, this actor friend of yours, his name starts with J, ends with on Travolta. I'm kidding.
No.
But the point about these things are here to serve me as the thing to keep in mind, whether it's exercise or anything else. It's like, I'm not a slave to this thing. This thing is here to serve me. Yeah. And that's the proper way to think about it, I think. Are we reading super chats? Is that what you
super chats? And then we finish with Rand's take on.
Okay. Marilyn says it depends what you're hustling, or maybe what you're hustling and why. Robert says, be self-supporting, self-responsible, self-assertive, do more self-improvement, self-help, self-development, but don't be selfish. I think he's tongue-in-cheek about how, like, in the culture, we get like mixed messages a lot. Like, we celebrate people pulling themselves up and motivating and self-generating, but also, but don't be selfish. And this is why we need philosophy. Jonathan Honig with $19.99, a real class act. And then Marilyn with $10 says, thank you. Well, thank you. All right. Nikos.
Oh, hustle culture and Ayn Rand. Of course, the term didn't exist then. So there are many examples in the fiction where you could say that the heroes are, quote, workaholic. One example is where Dagny and Hank discuss when was the last time they went on vacation. And she says something like, it's been 5 years. He says it's been 3 years. And they exchange their stories. And their stories is that they went vacation, and after like a couple of days, they freaked out and they returned. However, notice that what they do after is they go to vacation together. So it's a completely wrong reading to say that Ayn Rand says just work. Or think about in the fountain and how Roth, who works so hard, hustle culture at its purest in a way, he takes this 3 months vacation with Wyman. So what is the takeaway from all this? These heroes are, again, selfish. When Dagny hasn't got much going on in her personal life, she doesn't find pleasure in vacationing. She finds pleasure in her work. When she finds someone that she feels good with and she wants to do things with him, they go on vacation. The same with Rourke. He works so hard, sometimes pulls all-nighters. He meets Wyman, he enjoys his company, he goes away for 3 months. So, of course, Rand is a good example of what is the good, in quote, hustle culture, but don't get the wrong messages from it. Again, the point is do what serves your life and what you're trying to achieve in your life, which is first and foremost your happiness, properly and rationally pursued. Having said that, Rand says that productivity and productive work is the central purpose in one's life. Why? Because it's something that you put your mind on how to live as a human being. So these things are not a contradiction. These things make sense. You put your mind on how to live, but also you want to be happy to achieve your goals and to celebrate this. Therefore, you can have Rourke pulling the all-nighters and then going for 3 months in Winans yacht.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's worth pointing out, Rand, when she was young, decided to be a writer, and that became her central purpose. The characters she wrote had their central purposes. And then later, Rand, I guess, conceptualizes what we're seeing in reality and in these characters, which is that having a philosophy, including a central purpose, is conducive and complementary and aids your life. So it's not that first comes philosophy and then we figure out, oh, I need a central purpose and go find one. It can go in that order, but it's not how philosophy, I think, a good philosophy comes about. First comes reality and life, and then we can put it into words. I guess we conceptualize it. Mark, you mentioned that some objectivists could turn their career into something that they're doing by duty. Have you seen much of that? Because I enjoy a good objectivist bashing. My stereotype of objectivists is that a lot of them they think being objectivist is a replacement for having a life, for having a career, for having a purpose. They think, oh, I'm into objectivism. That is my identity.
Yeah, there's that too. There's people who have low emotional thresholds, or they're socially awkward and can't really tap their emotions, and they think objectivism gives an excuse not to have emotions. I mean, people will use great ideas to rationalize just about any crappy thing in their lives. So yeah, I mean, look, I mean, improve yourself. That's important. Go out there and work as hard as you can at being the best person you can. Part of that's going to be your job. And the more selfish you are about it, the less stress you're going to feel about working hard or being good at what you do.
Well, that's true.
It's so counterintuitive that the solution is so simple that, again, it sounds, I hate party line. I never use party line language, but this is like a revelation. Yes, just be selfish. Hustle, but be selfish.
And even that is a concept that is derived from reality. So what do you want is kind of the first question. What do you enjoy? What are your passions in life? And when you are passionate about something, nobody can tear it away from you, right? That you're racing against the clock. There's never enough time in the day when you're actually passionate about something. So even when we're telling people, have a life, have a career, be selfish, even there, you need to kind of start with people's values, I think, for it to make sense.
Yeah.
Right on.
So in conclusion today, it all depends. Look at reality, and the answer is nuanced. Is that basically the answer to is hustle culture yay or nay?
I would say more people need to. Okay, no, I'm not. In the culture, it looks like the culture needs more of a doses of more David Goggins and more hustling rather than less. But again, how this translates to each person's context, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I would say don't drop the ideals the way that the present culture is trying to push us. Hold the ideals. Don't let them challenge you, let them make you better, but also measure yourself realistically by your own context, and you will find that you will become a better, happier human being.
Mm-hmm. And check your premises, I guess. If you find yourself like having a dichotomy, like a conflict, like either there's this fast-paced achievement culture of achievement, lifestyle of achievement, or there's depth and love and appreciation. Are those two things at odds necessarily? I would question that because
I don't think so. I think Stephen Covey said it very well. You have to take time to sharpen the saw. Human beings are more than they're multi-dimensional beings. They need satisfaction on lots of levels, and work is a huge level, of course, because you spend a lot of time doing it to your purpose. But there's lots of other points of interest and meaning in our lives that need to be fulfilled.
Were you guys
purpose and love are the top for sure?
Were you guys very like busy in your young days, like in your early 20s or even late teens? No, Nico says. How about you, Mark? I imagine to get into the acting world, you had to hustle.
Yeah, most actors don't. I would rehearse 4 or 5 times a day, but I was in that hustle mode of I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, and that my mentor gave me that sense of being behind, the clock and needing to catch up all the time. It served me in a way because most actors are really actors, but most actors are very lazy and they don't like rehearsing. But it still didn't have the joy that simply doing it for its own sake and for my own self-improvement gives me that feeling now. I don't perform for anybody else anymore. I want to do it for me.
And Nikos, you were shaking your head no, like you were not that active.
Yeah, I didn't have direction. I didn't have any discipline. In a weird way, it was the army that changed that. So I think the change happened in a time of my life when I realized what a waste it is living your life without a direction and without discipline and without getting after something rather than just I'm gonna study, I'm gonna have a job. So that was the course of my life, and I would be super, super, super unhappy if I had to continue to that. That's why I'm a bit more sensitive in the kind of take it easy stuff, because this is what I was doing and it didn't serve me well.
I was the guy first in my early 20s, late teens. First off, I was working jobs that no one else wanted to do. So a lot of my friends at the time, as soon as they could, they would basically go on welfare. They would get a bridge card and just start milking the government. And I was working for minimum wage, whatever job I could get. And just so I was doing that. And also any free time I had, I was going home and working on my computer on passion projects. So yeah, that's something that's hard. Money can't buy. You got to sort of find that within yourself. Yeah, Mark.
I wouldn't be able to relate to going on to welfare. I mean, from 12 years old, I was mowing people's lawns for money. I was doing a paper route. I got a job at a fast food restaurant, worked through high school to pay for my books because my mom, I felt, was stretching her finances thin to send me to a private school, because at the time in public school children were being used as a social experiment. They were being shipped to various places in the inner city, and it was causing a lot of strife, and it was a really unfortunate situation. So she got me out of that situation. I felt like I wanted to help her, and so I took jobs to do that too. I couldn't imagine feeling okay with getting a check for doing nothing. That would be so vile to me. Yeah. Unless it's a residual check, because then I did something and it's coming back to haunt me.
Yeah, the menial job things is interesting, because I started doing menial jobs after the army when I went for my PhD. It's what really puts you, once you get into this momentum that I might do a crappy job, but there's money coming in and this builds up to something, it's the best training. So welfare, again, I guess there are some people who don't have other choice, but it's soul destroying. Or put differently, even doing the worst job, but knowing that you earn that money is invigorating and it's very good for your self-esteem.
Absolutely right. And like knowing that you earned this food makes it taste better, and knowing that you earned this house makes it more enjoyable. So, well, Nikos, whatever your past faults were, you're like the hardest working guy I've ever seen in terms of reading books. This guy reads 4 books a day or something. And,
a day?
I think so. No,
You're a fast reader, man.
No, actually, that's a joke from Rucka. But actually, it's the opposite. I'm a very slow reader because I keep
I'm a
notes
very
and
slow
stuff.
reader too. These are the 2 I'm working through now.
Okay.
All right.
I like Mortimer Adler.
It would be a good idea. I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe once every month or 2 months to present on a Thursday collective the books that we've read in the like self-development or fiction that we've read in the previous month and what we took away from it.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Little book club action.
Yeah, but informal.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, gentlemen, I'll have to jump off soon.
All right, couple
right, me
super
too.
chats. All right, let's wrap it up. Enric says, keep yourself with your limits in the context of your goals. And then Regina sends €5 and says, good job. All right. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all for joining us. We've got coming up at 10 p.m. UK time and Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasser. All right, everybody. And we'll see you back here tomorrow, same time for the Daily Objective. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nikos. Now let's get out there and hustle. And goodbye.
Scene.